Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Lincoln City's pre-match show Matchday Live. The Imps taking on Rochdale at the LNER Stadium. We've got another jam-packed show coming up for you this afternoon. We'll have all the build-up to today's big game, including the team news, of course, live for you right bang on 2 o'clock this afternoon. We'll also be looking back at that spectacular Morgan Rogers goal at Portman Road against Ipswich Town on Tuesday night. And we'll be speaking live with George Grant later on in the show as well. So do get some questions in for George and I'll do my best to put those to him. Delighted to say, as ever, that Gary Hutchinson joins us on the show. Gary, nice to see you. 4 points from 2 games. Solid week.
Yeah, I think so. It was a challenging game on Tuesday night. I think if you take it in the context of the first 45 minutes, people will think it's 2 points dropped. I think if anybody looks at the fixture list in August and sees Ipswich away, you think, you always take a draw there. Thought we were solid. I think Ipswich are on the up under the new manager as well. So there's absolutely no shame in coming away from a point with Portman Road, none at all.
Yeah, we're looking back at that game shortly as well, Gary. No Sunderland, no Peterborough, no Portsmouth in action today. How much of an opportunity is this for the Imps to make a bit of a mark on the League One table?
It's a massive opportunity, and it's one we've got to take. I think when you look at get to this stage of the season and you start talking about games in hand, they're not as impressive as you might think in December. Points on the board are better. I said it when we had played more than Hull. They've obviously played more than us now. They've got the points on the board. If we were to get a good result today, it could take us above Peterborough. It'll put a bit of breathing space between us and Sunderland, potentially going into our meeting. Takes all the pressure off us and puts it on our opponents. So big afternoon for us in terms of the whole season.
Yeah, Michael said after the Ipswich game on Tuesday, didn't he, that he would know after today's game just how good a point that was, I guess. And if you look at it this afternoon and you think, okay, we can take 7 points from a potential 9, 2 wins and a draw out of 3 games, that would be a pretty good return, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from every three games, you've got to take 6 points. That's 2 points a game. If we do that between now and the end of the season, it's my firm belief we'll be in the Championship at the beginning of next season. So arguably, and I said it at the time, Tuesday was a free hit for us. We took a point, brilliant. It is a good point if we win today. If you don't win today, it isn't a good point. But in actual fact, it probably still would be. It would be today that would be the letdown. So there's no easy games at this level. Michael said that in his press conference. I understand that, but this is a golden opportunity for Lincoln City.
Just to bring you some injury news, or certainly news that Michael brought us throughout the course of the week. Good news in the shape of both George Grant, who, if you're only just joining us now, will be speaking to live on the show in around about 10, 15 minutes time. He may well be back slightly earlier than feared. We may well see George for a couple of weeks before the end of the season, which is just great news indeed. And Liam Bridcutt may be back slightly earlier than hoped as well. Gary, how big is that? Obvious question that it is to have 2 players like Liam and George back before the end of this season, knowing what we know about the running.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And look, let's take them as 2 separate entities, because for me, getting Liam Bridcutt back is absolutely imperative. The sooner the better. He's been out for a short while. He's going to be at the end of his recovery period, his recovery cycle. And when you put him back in that holding midfield role, gives us more flexibility in the wide areas at fullback, where we know Michael likes to rotate for freshness. And Liam just pivots everything. He's the captain, he's the conductor, he's the puppet master. When you move on to George Grant, you've got a player there who's without a doubt one of our star players. Very, very creative, scores a lot of goals. At the same time, I don't want to see him rushed back. We've seen players rush back from injury before and not quite come back the same. So I'll be happy for George to take a little bit longer, because I think that we have creativity in the forward areas. But getting Liam back is going to be huge for the club.
Right then, before we look back at the highlights from Tuesday night's game against Ipswich Town and that fantastic Morgan Rogers goal as well, I just want to tell you about a new initiative that the club are launching this afternoon. It's called the Train of Fame. It's in association with our platinum partners, LNER, of course, the LNER Stadium, as you'll certainly know by now. Now, take a very quick look at this, because what the club are doing, they're launching the Train of Fame. It's a mural that's going to be on show in the fan zone next season, and you get to decide which legends are going to appear on it. Have a look. Yeah, and you can see it there. Vote for your Lincoln City Legends at www.lnerlincolnlegends.co.uk. All you have to do is sign up, first name, surname, email address, which legend you're picking to appear on the Lincoln City Train of Fame in association with LNER, and why they should appear on it. So, Gary Hutchinson, I'm going to put you right on the spot here. Give us a top three, starting with your first.
Starting with my third. Okay, so my third pick, and I'm only going to pick players rather than managers, would be Peter Gain. And I know that will be probably a slightly controversial one for some of the things that happened afterwards, but he was a legend for me. He had a wand of a left foot. He was a magician. He was to football, in my opinion, what Da Vinci was to painting. So yeah, Peter Gain for me, 100%. In second place, I would pick Gareth Ainsworth. I know he's a manager of an opposition player now, but I did an article the other week on my website just explaining why he epitomised Lincoln City for me. He came through the Britpop era. He was what I describe as a rock and roll footballer. And, you know, by the way, he could score a goal as well. So I think he got 42 in 97 or something like that. Great player. My all-time legend, I only saw him play in the latter stages of his career. It'd be Gordon Hobson, without a doubt. He spanned two generations. He was my granddad's favourite player. He was one of my dad's favourite players. And he came back and he was one of mine after we came out of the conference as well. I think he scored more goals than any player in the modern era for Lincoln City. Absolutely phenomenal footballer. And I would imagine that early 80s team will feature prominently in a lot of people's opinions and voting.
Good three, Gary. Certainly interesting picks. Just a reminder, you can vote for your legends at www.lnerlincolnlegends.co.uk. And do get your comments in regarding this as well. Let me know which legend you would like to see on the Lincoln City Train of Fame in association with LNER, because I want to know, and I'll certainly be putting them to Gary Hutchinson and some of our guests throughout the show as well. Neil Carlton has been in touch. He says, potential banana skin, but if we attack from the off, I can't see them being able to handle us. Early goal in history suggests that they will fold. Certainly hope you're right this afternoon, Neil. Right, Gary, let's take a look back at the Ipswich highlights then from Tuesday night. Certainly from a first half perspective, that was up there with some of the best football we've played probably since the turn of the year.
Yeah, I thought we were excellent. I thought we started on the front foot. We soaked up a little bit of what they thought that they had to give us. Remember, they're the home team and they've got a decent squad, whatever their fans will tell you. But we knocked it around. We played with real pace, real verve. Cohen Bramall, I thought, in the first 20 minutes was outstanding. I mean, he had Luke Chambers on toast for breakfast. He was just leaving him dead every time. Morgan Rogers, Brennan Johnson both looked on it. And let's face it, that should without a doubt have been 1-0. The ball's come into a great area. It was just such positivity. And then obviously we got the goal, which was, you know, a worthy goal of the season candidate, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, you say we're the goal of the season candidate. I mean, that is a very fair shout, but we've seen some strikes so far this season, haven't we, Gary?
We've seen an awful lot of good football and an awful lot of stunning strikes. That is up there, though. That really is, because, you know, he's made up the yards in the middle of the park. Ben pointed out on the podcast that Cohen Bramall's drawn players away from him, which again, you know, a solo goal is very rarely a solo goal, even if it's the movement that another player makes off the ball. Absolutely first rate, I thought. And unfortunately, in the second half, we just struggled probably to maintain that momentum. But remember, we played 8 games more than Ipswich Town have going into this, and we're still in the grip of a mini injury crisis as well. And yeah, whilst it was disappointing, it was a disappointing goal to concede. I do think that the players did themselves proud. And
that stat you mentioned there, Gary, I know it was mentioned in commentary as well, the fact that we played going into that game 8 more times than Ipswich Town, that is not to be sniffed at, is it? I know the commentator for BBC Radio Sussex at the time as well pointed out that it was, I think, 7 consecutive Saturdays that we played, or something along those lines as well. When you take that into consideration, it's not a surprise, is it really, to see the boys drop off slightly in the second half after such, you know, a sort of quick paced, if you like, first half?
No, absolutely not. I think at the beginning of the season, we were able to maintain that pace over 90 minutes. I think 1 or 2 of the players still are now, but you know, Rogers and Brennan Johnson do so much running, and they were tracking their fullback all the time. Johnson's tracking back. You don't always see it on iFollow, but he does get picked up on various commentaries. He's been working incredibly hard. So you can understand it. I think we probably played a little bit too defensively in the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half. And I think when we put our foot back on the gas in the last 10 minutes, we had a great chance with Brandon Johnson to win it. So I think we could have won the game. But at the same time, there's absolutely no shame in a point. And it certainly wasn't a bad performance at all.
It's a really interesting point you make again regarding Johnson and Rodgers and their tracking back. For such young players, they show, don't they, such maturity, 18 and 19 respectively. This loan spell has been brilliant for us. It's been great to see, and it's been great for Michael Appleton and his squad. But I think also, in terms of their development as players, it will benefit them hugely that they've not only played regular League One football, but played in a number of different positions and had to drop back when needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to be fair to the coaching staff, I think we've seen it more from Morgan Rodgers in the last couple of games than we did in the first couple of games. And I think that's testament to the fact that the management team are working with him. I don't think he tracked back all that much in the early stages. He's a flair player. That's what he does. He's exciting. When he gets on the ball, he gets fans up off their seat. But you have to put the hard work in. That's what made George Grant the player that he is today. He was struggling to put the work in against Wimbledon last season, but he listened to Michael Appleton. When you've got good coaches who command respect, like Michael does, played at the top level, played with Eric Cantona under Sir Alex Ferguson, these players are going to listen and they're going to develop. And that's it's great for us because it just means next year, when there's the next batch of exciting young talent, Lincoln City will be at the head of the queue.
We've clipped up some Morgan Rodgers goals from the last couple of weeks as well. So take a very quick look at this. You just can't help but smile when you see that last goal. It is absolutely sensational. I think Ben Ward compared him to Lionel Messi on the podcast, which is always a bold shout when you compare any player with Lionel Messi. But Ben's actually joining us later on in the show, so we'll be asking him about that comparison, no doubt about that. Gary, the amount of goals that Morgan has scored outside the box as well, you talk about offering something different. And at times, I know you mentioned it on Matchday Live, you mentioned on the podcast in the past as well, that we were guilty slightly of overplaying at the start of the season. And then Morgan comes in and he will literally shoot from anywhere.
He will. I think Anthony Scully does it a little bit as well, but you need that sometimes, confidence, a little bit of not being afraid to fail. I think that's the key. And I think sometimes when the pressure's on, players can think, well, I'll pick a pass rather than lash a shot into the stands. And when a shot goes high and wide, everybody sighs, well, should have done better there. But at the end of the day, you don't shoot, you don't score. But you've got to pick your moments. And I think with Morgan Rodgers, we see it more and more that he picks his moments when to shoot now. And we play a lot of good football in front of the 18-yard area, and sometimes you do want somebody to get hold of it and have a go. But we do have players that can do that now. I'll be honest, I think that boy's going to be special. I think he'll be playing Premier League football in a year or two's time. I really do.
Big call, but we can't blame you for saying it, Gary. Let's hear from Morgan now. This is what he had to say in his pre-match press conference a few days ago.
Yeah, I'm loving it. The players, the staff made me feel welcome coming into it, and it feels like home already, even though it's only been a few months. I feel settled, feel comfortable, and I'm enjoying playing.
And what about your game as well? Do you feel your game is developing now that you're playing men's football?
Yeah, definitely. That realism when playing the game is obviously completely different to academy football, and I'm just enjoying my football at the moment. Obviously, improving game by game, always wanting to get better. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
What about the relationship you have with Michael Appleton as the manager and the coaching staff? Can you take us through the work Do they pull you aside and talk you through game moments at times as well?
Yeah, the gaffer's been great with me. He's allowed me to be myself within the structure of the team. So I still can implement my strengths, but still within a team structure, which is perfect and ideal for what I want. So yeah, the gaffer and all the coaching staff have been really good with me and helping me through it and stuff.
Incredible as well when the front three you were playing when Callum played at the weekend. I think the oldest of you was just over 20. It's a very young front three.
Yeah, very young, but we all know we all have obviously amazing strengths and we all play off each other really well. So I feel like the younger the better, I suppose, in that sense. And we just played well together, and yeah, I enjoy playing with all the players.
What about the experienced players who've played at a level before, like Liam Bridcut, like Tom Hopper? Do they help you at all, both during the game and away from the game itself?
Yeah, especially Hops and Brids put their arm around me from time to time and just check in and stuff like that. You know, kind of like the brother figure of the group, kind of thing, and just help you through it and stuff like that. So guys like that are really important in the dressing room just to get you through tough moments, especially being one of the youngest, obviously not gone through all the scenarios that they might have. So yeah, it's just helped to get them through it for it.
Yeah, Morgan Rogers there speaking to BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Michael Horton. He speaks so well for an 18-year-old as well, Morgan. Not only capable of some brilliant goals, but a really good talker as well. Hopefully at some stage we'll get him live on Matchday Live throughout the course of the season. George Grant will be joining us very shortly. In the meantime, do get your questions in for George. Leave the comments in the relevant places. I'll keep my eye on them. If you could just leave them with Q for George or something like that, I'll do my best to put them to George throughout the course of the interview. A few comments coming in with regards to the Lincoln City train of fame. Plenty of comments coming in, I should say. Alex Webber says, Gareth Ainsworth, Grant Brown and Simon Yeo, 3 brilliant choices. Lindsay Warwick says, so many to choose from: Grant Brown, Gareth Ainsworth and the Cowleys. Richard Godson says, we're going to need a longer train as well. I think that's a very valid point, especially after the last few years we've had as well. We'll be having more details on the train of fame throughout the course of the show as well. Right, delighted to say that George Grant joins us live now. Let's bring in George, who's live at the LNER Stadium. George, nice to see you. We've been talking about Morgan Rogers, so I'm going to ask you about Morgan and what he's been like to play with, first of all, because he speaks so well for an 18-year-old, but he plays like such a mature player as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's come in and done really well, to be honest with you. He's joined in with the group straight away. You could tell first day that he's got a big personality and stuff. And I think for an 18-year-old to come into a changing room and stamp his authority like he has is really good from him, yeah.
Has he been taking a leaf out of your book in terms of the long-range strikes?
Well, yeah, obviously. Well, in the last one, it was a great strike, to be honest, and we see him do it a lot in training. I've said to him and Bren around the box, they need to shoot more. And he's done that. He's used Cohen's run really well on Tuesday and stuck in the top bin, which is great.
Tell us how you are then, George, because obviously we're all absolutely gutted when you picked up that injury against Plymouth. Since then, there's been slightly better news, hasn't there? Yeah,
so from the MRI scan, it didn't look very good. Looked like I had a grade 3 rupture, which is probably the worst you could probably have. So it looked like I was going to be out for a long time, probably with surgery. But going to see the ankle specialist, and he said pretty much straight away that I wouldn't need surgery, so that's good news. And it's just like rehabilitating the other 2 ligaments that are grade 2. So good news, but still a while to go.
Is rehab, as you mentioned there, is it a case of rehab at home, or do you rehab? Will you be rehabilitating at the training ground? Because I know you've set up a home gym, am I right in saying? And I know you're into your yoga as well.
Yeah. So I've got loads of stuff like that at home that I can use. But for the first week, I was in the boot, so I wasn't able to drive. So stuff like that. So not this week gone, but the week before, I wasn't in much. This week, I've been in every day. Now I'm allowed to drive and stuff, and I'm out of the boot. So it's hard work, to be honest with you. A lot harder than playing. So, but yeah, it's going well.
Matthew Walker's got a question for you, George. He says, what do you feel is your best position?
I get this question a lot, actually. Every time I sort of do media, I get this question, but I just enjoy playing, to be honest with you. I think I have more influence on the game in midfield. I definitely think that, especially when I'm playing the number 8 roles, where I can sort of do both defensive and attacking wise and be sort of a box-to-box midfielder. But I enjoy playing left, and I enjoy the holding role as well, especially in certain games when you can get on the ball a lot.
Who's the best player you've ever played with, and who's the best player you've ever played against, George? Putting you right on the spot here.
Yeah, okay. I would probably take. I said this ages ago, but when I made my debut for Forest, we played Tottenham away, and Paulinho was playing in the number 10 role, and he was just an absolute joke. Like 1 minute he was next to you, the next minute he was 5-10 yards away from you. So definitely him against. Played with, I'd probably say Henry Lansbury is up there for me. He's the first name that comes to mind. His like technical ability is great, and his eye for a pass was next level at Forest.
Two very good answers there, Paulinho. Yeah, it's a great shout. Hi, gents, says Lee. What does George think has contributed to taking his game on to another level this season?
Penalties? No, it's. I feel like I've been much more consistent this year. I feel like I've done the defensive side of the game so much more this year. I've kicked on from last year, especially, I think, on that side. And yeah, just trying to affect the game as much as possible and being in the middle and being able to do that.
Yale, George, I've clicked the wrong one there. Apologies. Yale, one of our Mexican imps, says, "Is it Jorge like in Spanish or George?" Clear that one up for us. Anyone watching that doesn't know. It
is George, but none of the boys call me George. They call me Jorge. I think that's kind of stuck with everyone now. So it is George, but I get called everything, to be honest.
Could you just give us an insight into what the dressing room is like? Because obviously, normally fans would get to meet the players before and after games, certainly at the LNER Stadium. They've not had that luxury over the last year, 15 months or so. You know, give us an insight. Who are the big characters in the dressing room? Who chooses the music? Who are the jokers?
Well, I think one sticks out, and that's Harry. I don't think that ever changes. Harry's the joker. Cohen's come in and done a bit of the music. Morgan's done a bit of the music as well. But yeah, there's a lot of big characters in there, but not a lot of nice lads as well. I think we've got a really good changing room, and everyone backs each other up on and off the pitch, and we've all got a good relationship, which is great.
Great stuff, George. Just finally then, obviously another massive game this afternoon, a huge opportunity as well with the likes of Portsmouth, Peterborough, Sunderland not playing. What's the feeling ahead of this Rochdale game? Yeah,
the boys feel good. I think we watched sort of Rochdale's clip yesterday, and I was in there as well, and we spoke about it a lot in the change room after, and trying to get the 3 points. I think being at home, I think the results haven't been as good as we'd want them to be at home. So definitely think we need to be on the front foot and have a fast start for the first 20, and then go from there. Make sure we go and get the first goal.
George, lovely to see you as ever, and good luck with the rehab over the next sort of few weeks or so, and can't wait to see you back on the pitch.
Thanks very much, mate. Cheers.
Great to hear the thoughts as ever of George. Grant was in brilliant form, wasn't he? Yet again, just such a shame that he picked up that injury against Plymouth, but hopefully we get to see him before the end of the season. Team news coming up with you in around about 5 minutes' time. We'll also be speaking to a Rochdale fan, Dean Smith, not the Aston Villa manager, of course. Later on in the show, we'll be bringing you the Rochdale starting 11 too. In the meantime, Gary, in terms of Rochdale then, they're going through a really difficult spell, aren't they? Bottom of League One as well. Lost 7 out of the last 9 games. Can they get anything this afternoon?
I think any League One team can get anything on any given day. If we're not bang at it, we've seen it against the likes of Swindon, who I didn't think were that great, but got something from the game. You saw Fleetwood come here and do a good job on us as well. So yes, the answer is yes. They can get something. Do I think they'll get something? Probably not, no. I always exercise caution, as you know, Sam. I always sort of play down the lower teams. When Northampton came after we'd beaten them 4-1, I said this will be a tight game. Don't expect it to be 4-5-0 Lincoln City. Something tells me this game, this afternoon, is one that we should go for the kill. And something inside me makes me think it's one that we will go in for the kill as well. I think of all the teams that are coming to Sincilbank this season, Rochdale will find it the hardest because we come off the back of 2 good results, a really good home result. As George says, we need to get that home form looking better by the end of the season, if only for our own confidence. And this is a great opportunity to do it. I do foresee a decent Lincoln win this afternoon.
It does seem, doesn't it, with Rochdale? And I know I mentioned we'll be speaking to a fan later on in the show, so I will put this to Dean Smith, who's going to be joining us. But it does seem, Gary, like all is not quite rosy in the garden at the moment. I mean, they had something going along with the fans forum in the midweek, didn't they? That they accidentally announced that Barry Murphy's signed a contract extension. Not ideal, particularly when you're going through the sort of run of form that they are. And the relationship between the fans, the chairman, and the chief executive it's certainly not the same as what it is here at Lincoln City. And you need those three, that sort of triangle, don't you, of supporters, chief executive, management, and chairman, all to be, or I say triangle, it's probably more of a square, isn't it? All to be singing from the same hymn sheet, if you like.
Yeah, you do. I feel quite a bit for Rochdale. I think their chairman that earlier in the season wasn't well and has had to stand down. I think they're the sort of club that get affected quite badly by the recent pandemic as well. They are a small side. That's not being detrimental to them. That's actually praising the way that they've managed to stay in League One. When they've gone back into League Two, they've bounced back. They've punched well above their weight for a while now, and they've done that through having a committed side, very much like Accrington. But I think this year probably has just been a little bit a bridge too far for them. And they've got some decent players. You can't underestimate them at all. But unfortunately, I think that the circumstances are beginning to conspire against them. I watched a little bit of their fans forum. I think it was the chief executive, I might be wrong. He was in tears, choking up twice when he talked about the club's current plight. The fans weren't happy to find out the manager had got an extension when I think they've won one in 17. It just all feels a little bit flaky. And I do feel for them because, as I say, I think they've done very, very well over the past few years.
Let's bring in Alan Long then, who's live at the LNER Stadium. Al's going to be giving us the team news from the LNER in around about 2 minutes' time. In the meantime, Al, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the show, I should say, so far, but we're talking Train of Fame, the LNER Train of Fame. Who would be on yours?
Well, obviously you two guys, but after that, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you've got to sort of pick between managers and players. But for me, it's got to be Gareth Ainsworth. Gareth for me is the best player I've ever seen in a Lincoln shirt. He's the nicest guy I've ever seen in a Lincoln shirt. So Gareth Ainsworth, if you're talking runners up for that one, Danny Cowley's got to be in there at number 2. Has to be. Absolute legend. I don't know. After that, there's so many to pick from, isn't there? It's hard to say.
Reedy.
Well, yeah. I mean, you go back to the recent period, you'd have to say Matt Reed and people like that.
I have to say, Al, Gordon Hobson is getting a lot of traction in terms of the comments as well. I know Gary mentioned him as well, but I think if you actually take one specific name from the amount of comments, it's Gordon Hobson that would be right up there.
Yeah, well, of course, Gordon was a huge fan's favourite back in the day. There he is in front of the old CG Tesh sign. Yeah, he was a fantastic player, wasn't he? One of my favourite players as well would be Glenn Cockerell of the same sort of era. If you're going back to that era, Glenn Cockerell was one of those players that is such a good footballer, would probably fit into Michael's team right now. He was that good a footballer. So, but there's so many to pick from, isn't it? It's really hard to pick one. But for me, it's the big man. It's Gareth.
Tell you what, though, Gary, Al has to be conducting it, doesn't he?
Oh, definitely. It looks like the conductor on the LNER fame train, big Alan Long, absolutely. Lincoln City legend. Hopefully.
Everyone that's watching this programme is shouting Fat Controller at the TV.
I hesitated because I am in no position.
I knew you wouldn't say it, Gary.
I live in a glass house. I can't throw stones. But what I would say is I hope you'd be stood there with Keith Alexander. I didn't pick a manager. But what Keith Alexander did for this football club, he absolutely must be on that fame train. And if he's not, I shall go with a Banksy-style stencil and put him on myself.
Very well said, Gary. Very well said. I'm sure he'll be on the fame train. Al, it is 2:00, so you're live with us at the LNER Stadium. So take us through today's Lincoln City starting 11, would you please?
It's my pleasure. Well, I can tell you there's 2 changes from the Ipswich game. So Callum Morton and Regan Poole both come into the side with Tom and TJ dropping to the bench. And as you can see there, you'll be very pleased to know that Liam Brookup makes a return to the subs bench. So the Imps lineup is as follows. Number 1, Alex Palmer. At number 2, Regan Poole. At 4, Lewis Monsmer. At 5, Adam Jackson. 7, Teo Eden. At 8 is James Jones. 15, Cohen Bramall. 18, Conor McGrandles, 19, Callum Morton, 20, Brennan Johnson, and 27, Morgan Rogers. On the bench for the Imps today, 31, Sam Long, number 9, Tom Hopper, 11, Anthony Scully, 14, Theo Archibald, 22, TJ Ioma, 23, Liam Brugcutt, and at 30, Sean Rowan. So that lineup again, the starting lineup, Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, Lewis Monsmer, Adam Jackson, Teo Eden, James Jones, Cohen Bramall, Conor McGrandles, Callum Morton, Brendan Johnson, and Morgan Rogers.
He's word perfect. That's why he's the conductor. Alan, much appreciated.
Pleasure.
Lovely to see Alan Long. I nearly called him Alan Johnson then. Lincoln City fan Alan Johnson, but Alan Long. I wasn't word perfect, was I? Great to see Alan as ever. Gary, Morton is the big one, isn't he? Morton coming in for Tom Hopper. That is the top line. Take us through it.
I think you'll see that. Certainly when we play 2 games in a week from now till the end of the season. I think if Tom plays on a Saturday, Callum will play on a Tuesday. We're trying to keep them fresh. And then if one picks up an injury, we don't have a tired player to replace him. So he really doesn't surprise me. He's actually, as I called it, I think on social media about 10 o'clock this morning. It's a really young forward line, but it's such a vibrant and attacking forward line. As long as we've got the central midfield well anchored, those 3 will score goals. They'll score goals all day long. So I think that's a huge shout today.
Yeah, Rob Stainton says that team and bench screams attack. Do you notice a difference in the front three's formation when Callum plays as opposed to Tom? Does Michael take into account, I imagine he does, being the manager, but does he take into account the opposition when he's thinking about the front three?
Potentially, I did think probably Ipswich was a Callum Morton game, certainly in the second half, but obviously we didn't see him come on particularly early. So I think there's a degree of just natural rotation. I think when you look at Michael Appleton's approach, in actual fact, he's very much about, we'll do what we do, you can come and do what you do. I don't think we specifically try and stop the opposition playing, which is very different to the previous regime, where everything we really did was geared up more or less around the opposition. I think we saw it when we drew with Bury in League Two. So Michael is very different. I think it doesn't matter who you're playing. If he wants to play Callum Morton up front and then he wants to play Tom Hopper the next week, that's what he'll do. It does change the demographic a little bit. I think Callum is more central, he's a little bit more of a poacher, so he doesn't put more reliance on the wide players. But let's face it, we've got great fullbacks. Bramall was superb for the first half against Ipswich. And if they're working well with the players in front of them, Rodgers and Johnson, as long as Rodgers and Johnson are then tracking back and working hard as well, I think we'll see a slightly more rigid Lincoln City, but certainly no less dangerous.
Been a late change to the bench. Sean Rowan is actually in. You'll see there on the graphic that it says Remy Howarth is on the bench. Sean Rowan replaces Remy on the bench. So just to clarify there, no Remy Howarth in today's Lincoln City starting 11 or on the bench. It is in fact Sean Rowan. Right. Delighted to say that the other half of the Stacey West podcast joins us now, Ben Ward. Now, Ben, your name's come up a couple of times on the show already today. One from Gary Hutchinson and one from myself, because I clocked on the podcast that you were comparing Morgan Rogers' goal to Lionel Messi's strike in the Champions League, no less. A bold shout. We like it. Tell us why.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Messi's strike, he took it past, a couple of players, and the way that he hit it, to me, I think Morgan's strike was, it sounds really odd saying it, as Messi is the superstar that he is, but it was a hell of a strike, and the way that it just nestled in the net. And I think what I said on the podcast is when a goal hits the side of the net and it just kind of rolls around to the back, to me, that's more or less the perfect strike. Just look at that, the way that it just rolls around into the back, and then you see Messi strike. I just think it's a better goal. That's just me, but we'll see.
How loud was the scream when it went in?
Well, I think me and my wife were both sat on the sofa and we both went, oh, kind of at the same time. We just weren't expecting it at all.
I like that, an evil chuckle. Decent.
Yeah, more or less.
Tell us, what's your reaction to the starting 11 then this afternoon, Ben? We're talking about Callum Morton coming in for Tom Hopper, and also tell us how great it is to have Liam Bridcut back in the side. I
mean, just starting with the news that Bridcut's back, I think I said yesterday on social media that the news that he might be back before the Gillingham game, or for the Gillingham game, was fantastic. It was a real pick me up for a Friday, and the fact that he's on the bench, just as an option to bring on if we need him, it's a huge morale boost. I think it's in the same way that Harry Anderson being on the bench last week was a bit of a morale boost to the fans as well. So, that's huge. I think the thing with Morton, obviously, there's he's got he's a different player to Tom. He's got a lot more pace to him, and he's got, he's just got that ability to cut through the defence a little bit more. Obviously, Tom does a lot of the hold-up play. I think it's probably a sign that we're going to go for the jugular today and just try and get an early goal and capitalise on that as much as we can, I think.
Go along with that, Gary. I'll bring you back into the conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an attacking formation. I think we're at home. We're the team that are chasing promotion. 3 points will put us second, and will put us well clear of Sunderland. I don't think specifically that's what the team selection is done in mind. As I said, I think it's a natural. I think if we were playing Sunderland at home today, there's a likelihood that Callum Morton would have played again. But it's certainly an attacking side. As I've said, it does put a huge responsibility, in my opinion, on McGrandles and James Jones, because you've got to have that midfield anchored. You've got to be in there picking up possession, potentially helping Teo Eden a little bit as well, because I think he struggled at times against Ipswich. So those three are the important factor in the front three working well.
Ben, friend of the show, Stu Wells has been in touch. He says, Benzon, that means the timings are going to be way over. Right to reply for you.
I'm not going to go through any analogies today, so I think we should be all right.
That's probably for the best, isn't it? I'm not going to go through any analogies, but tell us about the project that you've been working on over the past sort of 6 weeks or so, because you've got yourself a 3D printer, and pleased to say that the first thing you got printing was a miniature LNER stadium. Yeah,
so I mean, sort of a bit of lockdown boredom hit, and I was sat there looking at stuff, and I thought, well, what can I do? I need probably a new hobby, something to get stuck into. So I picked up a 3D printer, and I sort of found a couple of models online of the LNER. So I thought, right, okay, kind of took one of those and based my own model off it. So drafted up, my own one, and tried to get it printed and see if it came out. Thankfully, they came out really, really well. I'm really pleased with them and how they've turned out. And quick conversation with Liam Scully sort of said, look, would you be up for it if I made a load of them and sold them with all the profits going to the club? Thankfully, Liam said yes. There was no real issue with it, and I'm now sat in front of 100 different or little mini Sinsel Banks or mini LNERs, which I'm glad to say I got them finished off last night, and they're all ready to go. So here is one here. It's tiny. It's about 3 by 3 inches, but I managed to get a huge amount of detail in there, including on the co-op stand. You've got the Lincoln City embossed on the seats. You've got the Salensi stand there. You've got the Crypto Cloud, and then the Stacey West at the far end. The model itself has a lot more detail than you can really see in this, but you can even see just here. You've got the entrance to the Legends Lounge. But yeah, kind of the model itself probably took about 12, maybe 15 hours. And then the printing itself, I mean, I've got them in red, in grey, and in white. So put them up on eBay last Sunday, £15 plus P&P. And I'm delighted to say the reaction's been phenomenal. I've got, as things currently stand, have 15 or about 13 white ones left for sale. All the other ones have disappeared. They've been snapped up very quickly. So if there is demand, if there is people that want, any more people that want them, then I might possibly look at getting some more done. It's just that they have been that has been my life for the past 2 or 3 weeks, really, just getting them all printed.
I'm afraid to say you're going to have to add the train of fame onto them as well, Ben. So you have to get back redesigning them. Yeah,
I'm sure I can probably add something in there somewhere. I did get a little bit of stick from Gary saying that he couldn't see himself stood by the TP suite the other day, and sadly, I did say to him that if I did it at that scale, I think the only thing that would be visible at that scale might be my beard at the minute. So, yeah,
it's like being on the Stacey West podcast live. Gary, right to reply.
I'm staying quiet, me. Ben said he wanted a lockdown hobby, scissors and a razor.
I thought you said you were staying quiet. Just finally, Ben, and by the way, that's absolutely brilliant because just to clarify, all profits going back into the club, aren't they? So you're selling them on eBay. I'm sure you've got the details on your social media, but £15 a pop, but all profits going back into the club. Absolutely brilliant. Who would be in your train of fame?
Well, just before we go on to that, I was going to say that I am going to be. We will be giving one away today now. So if you want one, I don't know how we want to do the giveaway. If we just say I want a stadium,
we'll go best comment. Keep the comments flying in regarding train of fame.
Yep.
And we'll pick the best one at the end of this show. So reasons behind which legend you'd put on your train of fame. We'll pick the best or one of our best at random, if you like.
Good stuff. Yeah,
random, and we'll get it out.
That sounds good to me. I mean, for my train of fame, I think Gareth Ainsworth has to be on there. He was the first player that kind of got me falling in love with football. When he left the club, I think he was the first. It was the first time that football really kind of made me cry. I think I was only about 11 or 12 and saw it in the newsagents on the way home from school, and I was just like, oh, gutted. Other than that, I think you've obviously got to put management style. I think Danny and Nicky need to be in there, and Keith Alexander as well. There is no way that we can have that kind of memorial thing without having Keith in there, or a tribute. But in terms of players, I've got to agree with Gary. I think Peter Gain is just fantastic, and personally, I'd put Nathan Arnold on there because he was the person that kind of got me to fall back in love with football.
Great stuff, Ben. Just so we keep to time, as Stu Wells has rightly reminded us, we're going to have to pretty much wrap it up. But in a word, your score prediction this afternoon?
I think 3-0.
Great stuff. Like it. Hey, literally in a word. That's what we like. Ben, great to have you on the show, and well done on a great project.
Cheers, Sam.
Lovely to get the thoughts of Lincoln City fan and other half of the Stacey West podcast as well. Ben Ward, who's been making some miniature LNER stadiums. All the details will be on Ben's social media. All profits going back into the club as well. Gary, let's bring the Lincoln City starting 11 back in then. We've obviously talked about Callum Morton. We've talked about Liam Bridcutt being back into the side as well. But there's a change at wing back as well, because Regan Poole's coming back in for TJ Ioma, and that's probably going to be another sort of running theme throughout the course of the season, isn't it? Two excellent right backs.
Yeah, absolutely. If Bridcutt was playing, I think we probably would have seen Bramall and Eden swap as well. I really like Regan Poole. Actually, I think he's settled really quickly in the side. I always liked him when he was at MK Dons and when he was at Newport. I think of the fullbacks, he's the one that looks most likely to actually pop up with a goal. Bramall's final delivery has been very, very impressive. But I think Regan Poole may just notch a goal or two before the end of the season. So he's settled quickly. You would expect that. He's the winter signing that had already played lots of League One football. So it doesn't take as much to get up to speed as it does for, say, Cohen Bramall, who's been going to places like Barrow and Harrogate, with no disrespect intended, obviously. It's like for like. It's purely done with fitness in mind more than anything. I think you'll probably see Ioma come back in on Tuesday night.
Let's bring in a Rochdale fan now. Dean Smith joins us. Delighted to have Dean on the show, part of RochdaleFC.com. Dean, nice to see you. Been a tough season for you, hasn't it?
Hi, Sam. Yeah, it's been very tough, to be honest. I think we all expected to be in a bit of a relegation battle this season, but the manner in which we've really struggled to stay away from the bottom four has been difficult to watch at times. I think it's got to a point now where we're actually quite glad that we're not going to the game, which I think says a lot. We've not won at home since October the 3rd. We won one game in our last 17. We haven't scored in 7, I think, now. So, yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher by the week. And to be honest, the thought of escaping the relegation zone seems, although looking at the table, it's very possible. I think given the context of our recent run, it looks less and less likely by the week, to be honest.
Tell us what happened then at this fans forum earlier on in the week. And Barry Murphy, news coming out that he extended his contract.
Yeah, absolutely bizarre circumstances around that one. Nobody knew that his contract had been extended for another 12 months. The question was put to Graham Rawlinson, one of the directors at the fans forum, and he actually asked Brian, does your contract expire in May 2021? And Brian corrected him and said 2022. That was the first that any of us had heard of it. So, yeah, that was bizarre. There was a lot of things that came out in the wash in that forum that have had fans questioning sort of the direction of the club. we always knew that they were going to try and give context for the season that we'd had in terms of injuries and finances and things like that. But I think most fans were already fully aware of that. So it kind of felt a little bit like the club were trying to hide behind some excuses, if I'm being honest. And the fact that the Brian Barry Murphy news came out, it was very strange, and it had a lot of fans. I think the takeaway was that the fans forum actually raised more questions than answers, which is definitely not what the intention of the club was, obviously.
Yeah, not ideal. Dean, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the Rochdale starting 11 to face the Imps this afternoon. Just for Lincoln City fans at home as well, of interest. Gavin Bazunu, the goalkeeper. Ryan McLaughlin, Gabriel Osho, Paul McShane, Owen O'Connell's the captain, Stephen Humphreys, Jimmy Keohan, Ollie Rathbone, Matty Dunn, Connor Grant and Connor Shaughnessy as well. Dean, how would you rate that starting 11? What's your initial reaction to it?
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised that Hayden Roberts has dropped out. That's the only change from midweek. He'd been out of the team for a while and came back in and performed quite well on Tuesday night. So it's strange to see him drop out, but Ollie Rathbone's back from suspension, which is a big plus for us. I suspect it will see Owen O'Connell drop back into defence, and we'll stick with the three at the back, which we've used for the first time this season on Tuesday. It seemed to be working quite well in the first half, especially, and then we maybe tied a little bit towards the end. But I'm quite happy with that. I'm happy to see Rathbone back. He gives us a lot of energy in midfield, which we've definitely been lacking, especially with injuries to the likes of Dooley and Jimmy Ryan recently. And Matt Lund as well, who's been our top scorer from midfield. So that is a positive, having Rathbone back. But obviously the squad's still kind of decimated by those injuries. So it's going to be a very, very tough afternoon, no matter what side we can put out with the players we have available, to be honest.
I think Gary Hutchinson's got a question for you regarding Ollie Rathbone. Is that right, Gary?
Well, I was going to ask about Rathbone, but you've answered me, Dean, actually. So actually I ask about Barr on the bench, because obviously there's been lots and lots of talk. I mean, Manchester City, I think, deal fell through, West Ham, Celtic. You know, is he going to be a danger from the bench? Is it a surprise he's not playing more regularly from the start?
His form has dipped a little bit since January, since those links with Manchester City, which I suppose his head has kind of been turned, which you can't blame him for. He's a young lad, and obviously one of the biggest clubs in the world have tried to sign him. So I suspect he's not in the best headspace at the moment, which you can kind of understand. When he's on the pitch and when he's on form, he is incredible. He is such a talent. It's just a shame that we haven't seen enough of it this season. He's been very inconsistent, but again, he's 18 years old, so you're going to get that. But when he has that burst away, he kind of stands defenders up, and he wants to slow the game down, because he knows that when he starts again, his pace is going to take him away from most defenders at League One level. So, yeah, he's really exciting. It's a shame for him that the deal to Man City fell through. We'll see what happens in the summer. I think all Dale fans have got the fingers crossed that he'll sign on for another year, and we can maybe see him for 6 months, and then we can get a little bit more money for him, because otherwise he's probably going to go for a compensation fee in the summer, which will be disappointing. But yeah, he's a really talented player, and it's a shame we haven't been able to see more of him in the flesh, to be honest.
Dean, just finally, really appreciate your time this afternoon as well. Do I dare ask for a score prediction?
It's not going to be a positive one from my end. We've lost the last 4 2-0. I think we lost 2-0, didn't we, in the reverse fixture? So it kind of says it all, that I wouldn't be too disappointed with a 2-0 defeat today, but that's how I see it going.
Dean, we feel for you, but we do appreciate you joining us on Matchday Live as ever.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, Dean.
Lovely to see Dean Smith from RochdaleAFC.com as well. Knows his stuff, doesn't he, Gary?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I think Dean was on with Jake as well. It's tough. You know, it's tough when your team aren't doing well, and you kind of resign to the fact. And it's so, you know, we had it with the Swindon Town lad, didn't we, earlier in the season, where you want good, honest football fans just to be able to kind of feel positive about their club. And especially when it's a team like Rochdale, who I do have a bit of a soft spot for, because, you know, they do the right things the right way. It is a shame. So once 5 o'clock's gone and we hopefully do get a win, I obviously wish them all the best.
Right then, on last week's Matchday Live, we gave away, or we certainly announced, didn't we, 5 winners of a Lincoln City signed match ball. It's all part of the Imps Ultimate Raffle. So for anyone that's entered in the Imps Ultimate Raffle, all the details are on weareimps.com now. We've got 5 more winners to announce right now. So Anna Long, who's pitch side, has all the details.
Hi there, welcome to the latest Imps Ultimate Raffle. Now we've got 5 signed match balls that we've just drawn out, and they are going to the following people. We've got Jack Mulhall, we've got Peter Harris, Ian Jones, Adam Harrison and John Paul Stanley. So guys, congratulations, enjoy.
There you go. Well done to all those winners. And for anyone wondering, we're giving away the balls at the end of the season because we've got a few games to get through before then. These are pictures from the Stacey West stand from the LNER Stadium taken a little time ago. Gary, from Rochdale's point of view then, will they see this as a bit of a free hit this afternoon?
I think they'll feel a little bit, they'll see it like they're going to be the punch bag this afternoon, if I'm honest. Nobody expects anything from them, and that can actually be a huge advantage. But, very few expected anything from Crewe last week, and that's exactly what they got. I was quite surprised. I spoke to Ant Evans, the Crewe fan, after the game, and he was sort of suggesting that, Lincoln away for Crewe was tough. We don't expect to get anything. But yet ahead of the game, we were thinking, well, this could be tough. They could come and get a draw. So, perception is a very interesting thing. But it would surprise me if there is a Rochdale fan that is confident of getting anything at all this afternoon. But like I've said, that can be dangerous in itself.
Let's have a look at what happened then when the sides last met at Spotland earlier on this season. This is the best of the action. Yeah, what are your thoughts looking back on that one then, Gary?
I think it's interesting, actually. Lewis Munsmer and James Jones both scoring goals in that game, and arguably they've probably not quite been there. Certainly running up to the last couple of games. I mean, they both played very, very well against Crewe. It'd be nice to see them getting back on the score sheet, just sort of reigniting or confirming the reignition of their season in the last few games. It was a good afternoon. We played very, very well that afternoon. If we were on it from the start, we don't concede early, I think we'll be on it. I think we'll be successful again today.
A few comments coming in with regards to the pitch. John Smalley says, pitch looks amazing. And Charlotte Crowley says, pitch looks top class. It is great, isn't it, when you see the LNER pitch looking resplendent, Gary? It makes you want to almost have a game on it, but brilliant for the lads who were trying to play some good football as well.
Yeah, nobody would want to see me playing on it, Sam. But it does look nice. It does look a good surface. I think the type of football that we play, that's more important now than it's ever been, because we play lots of balls, zipping them across the turf really, really quickly at pace. We need to know and understand the bounce. It needs to run true. So I think it's hugely important. I think it's also interesting when you see games from the past, not this season, but sort of maybe 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and the state of pitches and how they've changed, just a real indication of how the game's changed.
Right then, let's go through. We've got about 5 minutes left of the show. Absolutely raced through it. So really appreciate your comments and you joining us on this afternoon's Matchday Live. Gary, let's go through some League One fixtures then. I mentioned at the top of the show that the likes of Portsmouth, Peterborough and Sunderland, none of which are in action today. So it's a huge opportunity. I'm going to start with Blackpool versus Fleetwood Town, Gary. Blackpool, a side that we've not really mentioned too much so far this season. I think they've had 8 postponements in League One this season. They've played 5 games less than the league leaders Hull, but they're only 4 points off Pompey in 6th with 3 games in hand. So it's a massive game for them.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of the season I fancied Blackpool, and I've said on the podcast on in midweek I think they'll make the playoffs. They're in great form. They're going great guns. Neil Critchley is a great coach. You'll obviously know that from Liverpool and the under-23s. He did a great job there. He's got great contacts within the game. It was a tough start for them at the beginning of the season. I think they'll brush Fleetwood aside. Simon Grayson's return to Bloomfield Road, and I think you'll see Blackpool certainly nudging the likes of Portsmouth and Charlton further down the table. The only thing that might stop that is having to cram so many games in a short space of time. Weariness could kick in.
Hull versus Oxford then, Gary. And Oxford, correct me if I'm wrong, could sneak into the top 6 with a win, perhaps for the first time this season.
Yeah, again, another side who at the beginning of the season I fancied heavily, who had they had a bad start as well. But Carl Robinson, again, he's a good coach. He's a little bit more abrasive, I think, than some, but he fosters a real Demonos mentality. And Oxford are another really informed side. It's a big challenge for Hull City, that. And I can see it being a draw. I don't think Oxford have got what it takes to go and beat Hull, but I might be wrong. But it's also ominous that you look at Oxford and Blackpool, they're two teams we still have to play as well. And I think they'll be there or thereabouts in the top 6 shake-up by the end of the season.
Ipswich versus Plymouth, and Plymouth having a right old time of it, aren't they? I think they've lost 4 out of their last 5. We know what happened in the other one. Can they get anything away at Ipswich, who seem to be making a bit of a charge for the playoffs under Paul Cook, don't they?
They do. It's a strange one because I think Plymouth showed us they've got a real soft underbelly. We played really well against them for a period, and we put them to the sword. I think they had 4 shots on target against us and scored. So we should have won that game. But also, I thought Ipswich, lots and lots of possession, very, very little penetration. James Norwood, a shadow of the figure that we used to see. Caden Jackson, maybe not quite doing it as well. So I think that could be a tough afternoon for both sides. If 0-0 written all over it for me. So one of them will now score in the first minute, but there we go.
There you go. Now your predictions are good, Gary, as we've found out throughout the course of the season on Matchday Live. Right, 2 minutes left of the show. If you're only just joining us, or you've only just joined us from the second part or so of the show, we're talking about the Train of Fame. This is going to be a mural that you're going to be able to see in the fan zone at the LNER Stadium next season. It's in association as well with our platinum partner, LNER. Take a very quick look at this video. Yeah, so you've been giving us your comments thick and fast on who you would put in the Lincoln City Train of Fame with LNER. I said that I would pick a comment before the end of the show, a winner of Ben Ward's miniature LNER Stadium. The comment I've gone for is Sam Kendall, who says, has to be Ainsworth, my first football crush. Dan and Nicky Cowley for the amazing memories. Rob Birch for helping my son fall in love with Lincoln City. So well done to Sam. I'm sure Ben Ward will be in touch with you about giving you one of his miniature LNER stadiums that he's printed off in 3D as well. And judging by the comments, Ben has just about sold out of those on eBay since he's been on the show. So great work to everyone involved. If you've bought one of those, all proceeds going straight back into the club. You can also vote for that now by going to lincolnlegends.co.uk, I believe, or a link almost as similar as that. All the details on the website. Gary, I'll stop talking. And in a word, how'd you see today's game going?
2 words, Lincoln win. I think 3-1. I can see Rochdale breaking the duck for scoring. Probably that kid coming off the bench bar. But I think that it will win. I think we'll win the game today.
That was more than 2 words, Gary.
Why say something in 2 words if you can say it in 20, Sam? That's my motto.
That's usually what I do as well. Gary, lovely to see you. Myself and Guy Hutchinson will be back on Tuesday night when the Imps host Gillingham at the LNER Stadium. You can get your match pass now by going to www.lner or weareimps.com/ifollow, I should say. I'll get that right one day. Really appreciate your time and do enjoy the game this afternoon. Bye for now.